Hi folks, Florida Man here. Today I'm bringing you one perspective on a game I played with several players I've now had a few interactions with. The game was called Perigord, and it was played on Backstabber. What follows is the English perspective. Hello, Ari, or Animals CS. Thank you for joining us today. And let's discuss the game we played together, where you were England, I was France. Perigord.
So, starting out with the first moves, I kind of use this as my default English moves. I think after this game I may be changing my mind that in press diplomacy there might be more reasons not to move to English Channel as England. But I think that if I were wanting to do a French-English alliance, I would like some reason for France to help me, and one of those reasons could be supporting English Channel into Belgium, for example. You know, having a fleet in Belgium is not particularly threatening for France because that's not an army that could, support attacks on Burgundy, and then I get that fleet out of the English Channel without, taking Brest off of France. So I think that's a reasonable sort of negotiation piece if I successfully move into the English Channel. Yes. And it's also obviously a good defensive in the case that France decides to move there in spring of 1901.
And here you did see that I did move there, and you did thwart my idea of
I do wonder
1901.
So I did wonder whether that was decided beforehand or after the sort of incident that happened around Piedmont, which I can describe in a sec.
I think it was sort of up in the air before that, whether I would work with you or Germany or what would happen. But after what happened with Piedmont, I think my mind was made up probably more by that than by anything else. So you can go ahead and describe it.
What happened was I was talking with Italy, and Italy was considering moving to Piedmont, and I sort of encouraged that because I think if I were in an alliance with France, I usually like there to be a small temper to the French advances to sort of allow me to catch up. And this is sort of the same way that I play Germany as well, that I don't want France to grow unchecked, because usually if France can do so, then they'll outrace their other alliance partner and can set up for relatively easy stabs from what I've seen. So I like the idea of having one Italian army or one Italian fleet sort of in the area, not threatening to France enough that France actually has to fight a war on that front, because I think that usually, unless I'm openly trying to attack France, I don't want France to be devoting that much effort to a defense. But I like the idea of France and Italy not fully getting along.
I certainly get that.
So, I encourage, and at this point, I didn't know whether I was going to work with Germany or with France. And obviously, if I'm working with Germany, I think it's useful to have an Italian army in Piedmont, though I would much prefer if that Italian army moved out before I was taking Portugal and Spain, because as England, I don't want to be competing with Italy over those two centers, sort of in the coming years. So I didn't want there to be a complete negative feeling between the Italian and the French that the Italian had to fully go and attack France, because that would also not really be good for me. But just one army there would be something that I would be happy to see. And actually, at this point, the press that I got from Germany, so this was an anonymous game, but the press that I got from Germany actually sounded a lot like the press that I'd received from you in the previous game that we played. And I knew that you liked the German-French alliance. And so I actually thought that you were Germany going for an FG. I thought that France was a different one of the players on the map. And I'm not entirely sure. I mean, obviously it was incorrect. I'm not entirely sure in the end what about your actual press sounded different from the press that I'd received from you before. I guess it sounded a little bit more vague, a little bit less planful than the German press, which maybe was an indicator that you were already planning to attack me and were just not really interested in pursuing plans to their logical conclusion as much as Germany was.
That might have been the case, because honestly, as France especially, I like the FG alliance. As Germany,
I can certainly understand that.
As Germany, I feel like I'm choosing between bad options. So with England and France, either way, I'm worried about this person who's going to be standing behind me the whole game, unless I do something about it soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually doing pretty well in a gunboat diplomacy game right now, where I kind of went with the strategy of work with England for the first part of the game until I can get the Scandinavian area of the map. But before England makes enough progress to get into the Atlantic Ocean, and then stab England. And so I've been kind of losing the Scandinavian area, but I've been gaining the corner of the map that England was sitting in originally. And France also has made a recovery, so it's been kind of like a French-German alliance where France had already lost Brest and didn't have Belgium. And so that was, I think that's kind of the way that I would prefer to play a French-German alliance as Germany is, not from 1901, but from 1902 or 1903.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. I notice, and I think this is a very understandable quality. I notice you seem to have a thing you really like having your allies weakened by some other outside factor.
I think if I were to have an ideal alliance partner, I'd like an ally who is the smartest person on the map, but who's being attacked by one of the other players. Keep your enemies close and all of that, but
I definitely understand that. Okay, regarding Piedmont, I just want you to know that initially when I had received word that that you might be trying to get Italy to move to Piedmont.
Was that from Germany, by the way?
No.
Who was it from?
I think, if I recall correctly, it was either Turkey or Austria.
Okay, so it probably was Austria. Because I've been talking to the Austrian player after the game, and he claimed that he didn't sort of leak that piece of information. So maybe it was Turkey, but I had a sneaking suspicion that it was Austria during the game, because I felt like Austria knew quite intimately what Italy was doing, even at this point, and also seemed to be the kind of player who was spreading news around the map. And so that was kind of my suspicion, was that Austria was the one who leaked the info to you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Austria. I looked back at the German messages a little bit ago, and it definitely was not Germany. So the way I then played that intelligence was that I confronted both you and Italy about it. That worked out beautifully because you kind of admitted to it, and when Italy denied it, I told them that you admitted to it.
Yeah, it definitely worked out sort of badly for the both of us. I, in general, don't like to be caught in lies, and you hadn't specifically asked up until this point if I was moving to English Channel. I don't think we ever specifically discussed it, though I think we both knew that we had to move to English Channel by that point. But, I would rather be upfront and say, yes, I did this. Either you deal with it or you attack me, because either way, it's not, at least from my perspective, I don't think that's an alliance deal breaker. I would expect you to be talking to Russia about moving an army into St. Petersburg and things like this. I guess that, at least the way that I play, I kind of expect that happening around the board.
I would say that I expect my potential allies to be talking to other people for sure, but convincing other people to take actions against me is, if I catch an ally doing that, I'm likely to turn on them.
I guess I also don't think of an army in Piedmont as an absolute attack on France, sort of going off of the previous thing that I was talking about, where there's just one army there. It's not an army and a fleet. It's just one unit. You can defend against that one unit. You just have to keep one unit there.
I think it's an attack on France. It's just a very feeble attack on France. Because, the Piedmont unit can't be used for anything else. If the person actually lands in Piedmont, then they've taken themselves further away from Austria. They've taken themselves further away from Turkey.
Not at all true.
No?
Piedmont is just as close to Tyrolia as Venice is. And actually,
yes,
I think a nice disguised attack is... Yes, of course. But Austria needs to move units out of Trieste and get them into action faster, much more than Italy needs to get their units into action quickly.
I'm just pointing out that the unit in Piedmont is more useful against France than anyone else, and it can't be used against Austria that season. So, like, if you
Sure,
kept
that
in
is true.
Venice or moved to Tyrolia, then you could attack Austria. If you moved to Apulia, you could convoy. If you moved to Tuscany, you're sort of hedging your bets and not really committing to anything, trying not to offend anybody. If you move to Piedmont, that's the only move that Italy can make that's aggressive against France.
I think it is a foolish Austrian player who doesn't have a backup plan in case Italy stabs in 1901, and therefore it's a foolish Italian player who tries to attack Austria in 1901. But setting up a surprise attack in 1902 is, in my opinion, very viable, and that could be from saying, oh yeah, look, I built the fleet, I've got my army in Piedmont already, Austria, I'm going to send this fleet over to attack France. And then you actually send two armies to attack Austria,
I think that's workable.
and
for sure.
you can put a fleet into Adriatic Sea, right? I think that you have a lot of options there as Italy.
Oh yeah, but that's because you're feinting the attack against France. You're pretending to be attacking France.
But I never want the Italian to actually be attacked. You see, that's the thing. I'm only talking about an army in Piedmont. I'm not talking about an Italian who actually intends to attack France. You see, so it is a feint regardless. It's first a feint to prevent France from getting an extra build that season, and then it's a feint, potentially, to stab Austria.
Well, in either case, I will say I don't think it helped your relations with France this game.
I think, as we can see from the perspectives, you look on it a bit harsher than I do.
I think if you're in France,
and it worked out quite well for you, so there's no harm, no foul in that regard.
So going to the fall, what were you thinking at this point?
So, getting bounced in English Channel meant that either there would be a very slow EG, and I could potentially convince Germany to do that, but Germany would have had to bounce you in Belgium and then take Holland, and I think from Germany's perspective, Germany would have also wanted to bounce Sweden in that case. But yeah, from Germany's perspective, I can see how these orders, if they worked with me, would have just been a very slow plotting alliance, because you had time from 1901 to get to get at least one build and get into a pretty decent defensive position. So I could understand them not wanting to go through with that, but regardless, I wanted to convoy an army into Norway for sort of two reasons. And I did talk to Russia about this. I told them in advance that I was doing this, but I anticipated an attack from France and Germany, and I wasn't planning to attack St. Petersburg. Who knows if that necessarily worked, but the thing is, if I moved a fleet, Norway was the only center that I could actually capture, and getting a build, I think, is better than not getting a build here. And so if I wanted to move the fleet there, I would then have to give up on my chance of getting English Channel. And I figured you would either bounce, or more likely you'd move to Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and having the English Channel is at least a relatively defensible position, especially if Germany is willing to let their alliance partner move a bit slowly, and so not helping France to get into English Channel, which I felt I could convince if necessary, though that didn't turn out to be true. So either way, the choice from my perspective was convoying the army is much easier, or is a much better choice, because I can either just convoy it back. I can also just rebuild a new army on the island, but I also then have the choice of building a fleet and just leaving that army there and potentially having a bit more negotiating power that way. So that's why I convoyed the army. I think in general, if you need to do something to break up an alliance that's attacking you, and by just turtling up and defending, you're not really accomplishing that. If you're Turkey, you can maybe do that for long enough that other factors on the board make it so that you can break up an alliance. But I think as England, it's better to just try to make some more forward progress and say, oh, Germany, look, I'm in Norway now. I could support you into Sweden. Wouldn't you like to work with me more than France, who is probably getting more out of this alliance than you are? I'm in English Channel. We could potentially work something out. I could convoy you into Brest, say. There are lots of potential options there by making forward progress. And if I'm facing an alliance of two people, it's it's unlikely. If the alliance stays together, I'm dead regardless, even if I take the best defensive measures. It might take an extra year or two, but I think in general that is the case. And so
it doesn't
being
matter
proactive
so much to keep the army on the island, because really what you need to be doing is breaking apart this alliance and taking the defensive position of like having the army on the island. It isn't a particularly strong play in any case, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's at least my perspective on this.
I think that's fair, especially since you were actually talking to Russia and clearing the fact that you were doing a convoy with Russia, you said.
Yeah, well, clearing it to a certain degree. Russia couldn't stop me, but they could certainly build in St. Petersburg there. And
we will see if that's what they do. No, they don't.
Oh, they do not.
So I think your diplomatic efforts there might have paid off a bit, and you get
though Russia does end up moving in the Scandinavian direction pretty quickly. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where it feels silly sometimes to make a play that might give you a 20 or 30% chance of finding an alliance partner and going somewhere important in the game, over a 60 or 70% chance that you can defend for another couple years, right? Like to most players, they're like, oh, I just want to stay alive the longest. But I think most players also have the goal of trying to solo or end up in a draw. And if you're just surviving for an extra couple years, you're not really achieving either of those goals. And so I would prefer to take the play that has the larger variance to it. Either I die quickly or I end up getting an alliance partner and doing well in the game, over the sort of safe play that likely means I'm dead.
Okay, so here you do get a new army in any case on the island, so that will help you defensively to have an army there. And
yes, I build an army. I build an army rather than a fleet in Liverpool for the same exact reason that I was talking about. In fact, Germany pitched to me that they wanted to do a Western triple. I think this was entirely a sham from the beginning, but they set up a chat with you, and we talked through this. And I figured if Germany's willing to pitch it, and clearly France is listening to Germany, then maybe there's some possibility here. And if there were a Western triple, or even just an alliance with Germany, I think it would be more effective for me to have that army to potentially be able to convoy somewhere like Belgium. That would be more useful to the alliance. Or convoy into Norway and move the Norway army to Finland or St. Petersburg, potentially, right? Either way, that an army allows me to keep making forward progress. A fleet in Liverpool is just for defense currently. And so I think that build is, I would say, is more controversial than, or should be more controversial than the convoy to Norway. And I don't know if I made the right choice there. I think a fleet in Liverpool is a really solid option as well, because England does need a sort of critical mass of fleets.
Yeah. Going to the spring of 1902.
So I make moves. This was a bit of discussion with Germany, but essentially the idea is getting an army into Finland can be pretty useful. It can support attacks on any of the three centers in Scandinavia, and then sort of moving the fleets and everything toward that goal. And I get attacked, which is what I was kind of anticipating, but there was some chance with, if you were the one proposing the Western triple, I would certainly not have, I would have just defended, because I would have felt like there was no chance that was true. But with Germany proposing it, I felt like Germany could potentially convince you to attack Italy, especially after Italy did try to move to Piedmont round one. And you caught them in a lie, which I knew about at that point. So I felt like there was some animosity. You could potentially be interested in attacking the Italian.
I will say that,
and if Germany could convince you to do that, since Germany's technically the weakest in the Western Triple.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Germany had actually wanted to do the Western Triple, I would have done it.
Gotcha. So
yes, because right.
Again, I failed to convince Germany effectively, which is, I think, the whole history of this game, as we'll see in the next couple turns.
It does kind of seem to go that way. You want to go into the fall then?
Yeah.
Here, it's the beginning of us successfully starting to surround your island. I get into Irish Sea, and Germany gets into North Sea. But there's nothing really you can do defensively here, because
I do help Russia. Yeah, I help Russia into Sweden. And I'm trying to see what this turn was, because I feel like there may have been discussion at this point between me and Germany that just didn't amount to anything.
I think I was actually surprised that Germany had put that army in Sweden. I remember, if I recall correctly, being surprised by that, because I thought, if we're going for England right now, there's no point in trying to make this early anti-Russian stance by trying to take back what you just gave him, which is, and Germany thought it was a fair deal because Russia's more secure because England's eliminated, so Russia will be happy to lose one to Germany because Russia gets Norway anyway. I didn't really see it, but
I think you're just building up you're showing that you're untrustworthy to the Russian player and to the rest of the board in a way that doesn't end up working out super well. And especially Russia is a player who you can potentially diplomatically convince not to attack you, but strategically Russia almost always wants to attack Germany at some point during the game.
They are natural enemies, in my opinion, and I think it's hard to get through a whole game without Germany and Russia ever attacking each other if they both survive the first few years.
I think that's reasonable, though I would say that it's quite possible for a game to end where Germany only puts some sort of sham attack, just moving one army to Silesia or something like that, just to keep Russia a little bit in check, in a situation where Germany potentially gets a large portion of the western side of the map, and Russia and Italy, split up the east, could potentially end up in a place where there's a three-way draw that no player can really solo from, but Russia never really needs to attack Germany. Maybe it's still a little bit contrived situation, but regardless, usually.
What's your thought process here? I mean, obviously you are trying now to make some sort of relationship work with Russia, because Russia is the only one of your neighbors that might potentially help you right now. What else is going on?
Yeah, so it seems like the fall turn of 1902 didn't really have a lot of conversation with Germany, I think, for mostly because, which I should have had more, probably. I think that, there were some time considerations on my part, and also just that it seemed pretty clear that Germany was going to support into North Sea, pretty much regardless of what I said. It is certainly a powerful tile in the game, and so it's not surprising that Germany would want that if they're in position to take it. So I think I was more focused on talking to Russia, saying, "Oh yeah, I'll support you into Sweden," and then I sort of was just making defensive movements to, prevent you from convoying to Wales, basically. I didn't think that was a big concern, but why not put the army there? So if I'm defending Liverpool, then at least you can't also convoy. If we bounce in Liverpool, at least the space is still occupied. You can't successfully convoy.
Yeah.
And I can retreat to Edinburgh, as you see I do anyways. So now I am pretty defensive, pretty much on the defensive. But I still have an army in Finland, though I think I disband that.
Do destroy it. And not much to say about this phase, so we'll go on to the spring. You destroyed the unit that was not going to be helpful to you anymore. So, At this point, you're making all kinds of defensive maneuvers, which naturally. What's going on diplomatically?
So in the spring, I've been definitely talking a lot to Germany about working together, at least trying to get Germany to reach out to Italy to coordinate an attack on you, so that I can at least survive. At this point, why not play to survive the longest? And that really involves Germany making a stab on you, not attacking the Russians at this point. And so the thought there was that if Italy and Turkey could find a way to work together, then Italy could send their fleets into the west, while Turkey. Yeah, and so I talked to Italy and Turkey about this. It's one of those sort of distracting myself from the inevitable end that I'm likely to find. But staying at least somewhat useful, and that didn't end up working. I think there are a lot of diplomatic conflicts between the Turkish and Italian players.
Did Germany?
I don't think.
I said, did Germany seem receptive?
Germany did seem receptive. I think that Germany was at this point like, I only want to attack France if I'm working with another player to do so, and so wanted to see Italian cooperation, some sort of commitment to that, and because they never saw that, they never attacked you.
Yeah, I think you might be correct. I mean, Germany is. I think if I recall correctly, Germany was pretty open with me about trying to deceive you or trying to get you to lower your guard relative to him by making it seem as if there might be some cooperation. And I think it's possible that this might have been part of that, but I'm not totally sure. And I remember, I do remember, I feel like I said that I didn't think there was any point in being deceptive in it toward you, because lying to you now will probably not change your moves, because you're defending yourself and you're going to defend yourself no matter what. And it's better not to bother lying, because then if you do need to say something later, you haven't burned your credibility.
Yeah, I think that Germany was actually intent on attacking you if they got Italy to help out. But I think that because they were not, they therefore were then continuing to work with you. But I just think these moves turn out to be really unoptimal, because if Germany's going to have any sort of fight in this game against you, once I am eliminated, it's by getting Edinburgh and London, presumably, and being able to round fleets around Norwegian into North Atlantic, and potentially into the English Channel, right? Because Germany's going to have.
I just don't think it would even be very realistic for Germany to try and attack me, because he's fighting you, and that's one thing. But more importantly, I think he's made an enemy of Russia, and Russia's
at this point he certainly has, and that's the big diplomatic problem.
I actually am trying to get Germany to walk this back, try and make some kind of peace with Russia. There's absolutely, in my mind, no purpose to continuing to antagonize the Russian when Russia's being, has been reasonably successful so far, has all of Scandinavia and hasn't been blocked from Romania. I mean, at this point, Russia does lose Galicia, but that's not a supply center, so Russia's still
to an Austria that's just been stabbed by Italy, or nominally so.
Yeah, Austria and Italy are doing something really strange throughout a lot of this game with each other.
Yeah, I think fancy play syndrome. They were trying to do lots of clever moves, both in their press and in their actual orders, in a way that was maybe suboptimal in the end.
Okay, let's go to the or unless you're.
But just last thing here. If Germany actually wanted to attack me, and I think that was their goal at this point, they didn't need to attack Scandinavia. Sure, maybe you predict that you need to bounce in Silesia with Russia, but you can at least sort of try to build up trust by maybe convoying Denmark to York, which I was unlikely to protect, and moving Scandinavia or Skagerrak to Denmark. Potential option, or moving a fleet into Norwegian and Skagerrak to North Sea. There are lots of options here that don't involve convoying an army that's the only real army on the front with you into Scandinavia.
Well, see, that's why I think that Germany, the last thing on his mind was actually attacking me, because and he was kind of getting distracted even from attacking you by this beef with Russia.
Exactly.
So
Germany used all of their units to attack Russia this turn.
Yes, I think I was annoyed by this, because I was happy because already your forces are down to your home centers, so at least maybe I could eventually win this fight on my own. But I want Germany to do something. Germany could have convoyed onto the island, and he would have succeeded. I would understand if Germany didn't think he could get into Yorkshire, because actually, before the moves actually play out, every single one of your units borders Yorkshire. So you could have done a bounce there. pretty easily.
I could have.
There, but you
But
did.
the thing is, I was sending so much press to Germany right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was clear that I was going to defend against you more than I was going to defend against Germany.
Going to the fall, we see
Yes.
Germany and Russia continue squabbling, and Germany actually does get a center off of Russia. It's just Germany is using 3 units to get 1 center off of Russia because Russia has 3 units up there as well.
Yes.
And also one of Germany's armies gets destroyed, and also I sneak into Holland.
Giving up the most useful spot on the board, arguably, to take 1 center, which they could have convoyed the army. They could have convoyed Norway to Edinburgh. This turn, actually, this was the one where I was really talking to Germany about predicting that you would move to Holland and saying, look, you can try to set up a stab here on France. This is the turn to do it if you're going to do it any turn. Make peace with Russia. You have some options. But let's see. I'm trying to see what my proposal was.
Okay, well, while you're looking, I'm just going to note that I feel as if after his spring moves, Germany's options really narrowed. And at this point, he couldn't successfully attack me given the moves that I actually enter. The only thing he might have done is successfully defend his centers that I am about to attack. He could have defended Holland by just moving North Sea there, and he could have bounced me in Burgundy. But if he did both of those things, then that would probably be a declaration of war against me. So then he'd probably be fighting potentially you, Russia, and me. So I see why he might not want to do that. And I think that Germany and I had a little bit of trust from the fact that, just based on the fact that he has now completely lowered his guard relative to me, essentially.
Yes. So the plan that I suggested was Munich to Burgundy, of course, and actually North Sea to Belgium and moving Skagerrak to North Sea. And he could have convoyed, but why I think that the fleet movement would have been better is both to demilitarize the Russian area and provide 2 fleets that are now bordering English Channel to potentially force that, or at least threaten it. And then move Denmark to Kiel, again, to say, look, Russia, I'm not actually going to attack you anymore. And assume that Russia will disband the army in Norway. So that now you'll have Belgium, presumably Munich stays put, but Burgundy stays open. And then there's an army in Kiel, and there's an open spot in Berlin where you can rebuild because you're not losing any centers.
Given the way that things actually played out, in hindsight, I think that looks like a pretty good play. All of that.
So that was I was saying propose to bounce in Holland with France was what my suggestion was, so that you know that France is moving Belgium to Holland, and then given that you can do all of these moves, and either you bounce in Burgundy or get into Burgundy, right?
That is an interesting proposal. I think proposing to bounce in Holland, it would have resulted in the same thing I actually did, but I think that might have been the kind of thing Germany wouldn't have wanted to do, because then Germany
it's a big red flag, certainly.
Yeah, Germany's now making it obvious that he's betraying everyone around him. I don't know. Germany's burned. I think the big mistake here was probably burning the bridge with Russia.
Potentially.
Because Germany could be in a fight with me and or you. If Russia was friendly, which Russia had no reason to be until Germany decided to take Sweden, and then decided to take Norway, and then decided to take Sweden again. So I think, if Germany doesn't do that, then Germany has options. But because Germany did that, I think that's why why I feel comfortable stabbing him here. With only
I think the big mistake, if Germany actually wanted to continue attacking me and Russia at the same time and defend against you, they needed to convoy Norway to Edinburgh. You just can't give up North Sea. That's almost a criminal mistake from my perspective. And that's why I didn't protect Edinburgh, because I was like, okay, if Germany wants to convoy the army there, that's fine, but I think I made a convincing enough proposal, and I never would have expected to see the fleet moving there.
That would have been a strong.
And at that point, it's like, what can I do?
Yeah, what you just described would have been a strong moveset.
Yeah,
we see what actually.
And you don't take any centers off of me here. If Germany had left me alive on 3 centers, I could have continued defending against you while Germany sort of figured out their squabbles.
Yeah, for
I don't know.
For a while at least. I mean, you would have had to have kept guessing right, basically. That's all. And you were doing a good job.
I was doing a reasonable job. I think the reality is that you are a good enough player that I would not have guessed right for long.
Maybe long enough to keep you in the game. Maybe you would have been, still alive. And you're doing a lot to stay alive. You're doing a lot to survive here. Here, you and I are talking.
Yes.
And
so now I start talking about sort of revenge, but really the sort of revenge that I'm talking about at this point is a little bit tinged with, hey, can you keep me alive on one center for a little bit longer so that I can at least keep doing stuff in this game? And
I kind of wanted to. I was kind of interested in that. I always like having like a janissary, because I like this idea of having unmarked additional units to your military.
Indeed, yeah.
It's because your real unit count is hidden sort of that way. It doesn't feel as if you're really controlling the other player, and you're not. You're just controlling them with words, which is the same way anyone ever controls anyone in this game.
Exactly.
So you do destroy that, and so that puts you in this anti-German position now, ready to take Edinburgh.
To be able to attack Edinburgh.
And we see you do, and I take London and move into Liverpool. And
yes.
So for me, this is when I felt like the plan was going pretty well. I was a little unhappy that Germany is defending himself effectively, but it's nothing less than what I would expect. I would have liked to have made progress, but that's just, I don't have an overwhelming offensive advantage against Germany at this point.
Yeah. So the thing is, if I didn't disband London, I could have protected that center, but I couldn't have protected Liverpool anyways in that case. So it wouldn't have made much of a difference. And what I figured is the sort of only chance for survival at this point is if I can get the army into Edinburgh and then convince Germany somehow to convoy me into Norway, and then stay into St. Petersburg or something like that. So I figured I'd at least support the army into Edinburgh.
Convoy into Norway is your plan from here. Interesting.
It was a potential. I had no expectation that Germany was ever serious about doing anything like that. But I wanted to get the German out of Edinburgh anyways. And so it's like, okay, take it with the fleet, take it with the army. I'll take it with the army, just in case there are some diplomatic options there.
Interesting. And we see going forward that you move the fleet into Edinburgh and you move the army. Well, you try to. You try to move the fleet into Edinburgh and the army into Yorkshire.
Yeah, and this is where I think it is kind of revenge at this point, because Germany's clearly not even trying that hard to attack you.
I mean, Germany is doing everything possible to Germany. It's just that there's not much possible. Germany.
Yeah, that's fair.
Germany does retake Holland, which is the only offensive move possible in the fall. And because Germany believed that Italy was going to help me attack him, which I also believed, Germany supports Munich to hold in place.
Yeah, that's fair.
Italy continues to mess with me here.
Oh yeah, wait, can we go back to spring 1904 for just a sec?
Yeah, sure.
So we see Italy convoys Tunis to Albania, where they could have taken the support into Greece. And I think here is a critical sort of place which benefits you, because had they just taken the support into Greece, they could have moved Ionian to Tyrrhenian Sea in the fall, and instead they have to use that to support the actual attack on Greece.
So the problem with what you just said is that the support to Greece was support for Ionian to Greece, not support for Tunis to Greece.
Oh, okay. Well, they could have still...
but yeah, you're right. That
had the conversation with Austria. Austria was willing to put Italy into Greece.
Right. And Italy needed to take that. It's interesting
if
how
there's any fight against you.
It's interesting how Austria and Italy have, I would think, the closest relationship of any two powers on this map so far throughout this game, and it continues to the very end of the game. But their coordination at times is kind of strange. And there are moments where Italy does things like one-dotting Austria for Trieste, and I just, sometimes I just don't get what the point of some of this stuff is.
Yeah.
But like you said,
this was the one play that I really wanted to point out, because I think this is sort of a turning point where Italy just doesn't have the critical mass to attack you then in the following turns.
I think that's a good point. I think with the fall moves, Italy does move into a position that I find threatening, but I would find it a lot more threatening if there was another fleet on the way. As opposed to this fleet that's just hanging out in the Ionian, which is just a little bit too far away to actually help fight me.
Yes.
Here,
and Italy's making an enemy of Turkey, which they kind of already had, but it still makes it really impossible for Italy to concentrate force.
Italy's doing making kind of a similar mistake to the mistake I think I saw in Talleyrand, which is that it's a backward and forward motion in the Mediterranean instead of committing to one enemy and defeating them and then moving to the other side.
I think Italy can successfully do the back and forth if each time they go back and forth, they're getting something out of it, either diplomatically or on the board. You know, if Italy captures Marseille and, you know, they don't necessarily need to capture Spain and Portugal if maybe they can get Smyrna, right? But if you can get some sort of back and forth going where you're building momentum each time, right?
I think the problem is that usually when you go back and forth, you lose the momentum when you go back. Like, even if you gained Marseille, if you go back and fight Turkey after that, you'll probably lose Marseille. Or
but that's why you need diplomatic stuff going on. Like, Italy needs to be talking to every country on the board in a much more
that's very true.
Involved way than anyone else.
Yeah. But going back to your island, this is the...
So this is where I kind of am actually getting some sort of revenge, where I'm moving Edinburgh to Yorkshire, because why not?
Why not, indeed.
I think this was actually, I talked to Germany about convoying, and they were like, no, I'm not going to do the convoy. So I was like, okay, whatever.
I think the convoy was always kind of a stretch, but I don't know.
Of course.
Germany probably needed to try whatever Germany could, but Germany did get a center by not doing the convoy, by vacating North Sea, but then Germany lost North Sea.
Yes.
So
but
gave me a good...
Germany also doesn't get another center off of Russia, right? And at this point, I think, maybe there was something there. I don't know. Clearly the convoy wouldn't have worked anyways.
At this point, I believe Germany's now made peace with Russia, and that's why you see Russia just supporting himself to hold. And Germany is just tapping Norway because Germany wants to keep Russia honest, is the way that Germany put it later.
Sure. Yeah, I guess they didn't want Russia to support you into North Sea or something.
Exactly. I believe that was exactly it. And, later that's going to actually work out. Here, though, you destroy your fleet and you keep an army.
Yep.
Do you mind if I ask why? Because I really wanted you to keep that fleet, and if you had, I was going to keep you alive for longer.
What would you have wanted me to do with that fleet?
Well, I think you'd first move it to Edinburgh, and then probably into North Sea or Norwegian Sea, and then it takes part in an attack on either Norway, Denmark, or Holland. So I would want it to basically be part of my navy. Because it's already positioned.
I can understand that. I don't recall you ever actually asking me to do so.
I don't know. I might have. I feel like I did, because I knew that if you had the army, it would only be useful for trying to retake the centers that I have of yours. Because unless I found a way.
There's a gap in between. In our press, we talk in the fall about the move to York, and then move to Yorkshire, and then there's no press in between fall of 1904 and spring of 1905.
Ah, okay. I guess I just thought I said it. I figured you would probably understand what I would want, but I was more focused on the fact that I was suddenly being attacked by Italy.
That's fair.
So that probably caused me
I get that.
Not communicate effectively there, or not communicate at all, apparently. Yeah,
I think I may have. I probably still figured, the army gives me some sort of diplomatic thing. And if I disband the army, then Germany could just try to move Yorkshire to Edinburgh. Maybe I was wrong about that, but I think that was my thought at the time.
Understandable.
I almost definitely would have disbanded Edinburgh if you had told me to.
Darn. That is the one thing that causes you to like be out of the game then in my
finally. Yeah. And I thought I didn't realize that this was a thing on Backstabber, but apparently once you are out of the game, you can't actually continue sending press to players, but they can still send press to you. So I got a couple of messages being like, "Oh, can I get advice on this move or that move?" I was like, "I would totally give you advice here, but I can't talk." So that was a little bit disappointing.
Shame. I didn't know that about Backstabber. And Play Diplomacy, it's different.
Yeah, I've played so many games on Backstabber, and somehow I've never encountered that before.
That is a funny mechanic. Well, that's too bad. And I feel like now my units that are on the English island are pinned down because I can't do anything with them without risking you retaking some of the centers that I do.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Which I would also understand if you wanted to do that, given that that's the only real choice you have as far as going anywhere, unless I can convoy you, which I can't because I only have one fleet nearby and it doesn't have any support near it.
Yeah. Indeed.
So there's not really that much to say. In fall, I support you into Yorkshire and take Edinburgh, and that's the end. But It was interesting having you in there as long as you were. It is a pity we couldn't have worked together for longer. Do you have any comments you wanted to share about the rest of the game after you're out, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I firstly I do want to say that this is one of the, despite my poor performance, I think this is one of the most entertaining games of diplomacy I've ever played, just because of the volume of press that was shared from all of the players. And really high level play. In fact, one of the players just won the virtual the World Diplomacy Convention. I'm forgetting VWC.
Wow, I didn't even realize that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So this is the Turkish player in this game won as Turkey in that competition. I don't remember the exact format. I wanted to play, but I had finals at the time, so I couldn't really commit the time. But this is one of those virtual face-to-face tournaments, and they won that. And obviously, you've been promoting your strategy through YouTube for a while and are very, very top tier. And the German player, as much as they made mistakes, was very interested in strategizing. Same with the Italian and the Russian player. I think the Russian player has had reasonable success on the Nexus, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and you won another game that I was in that we did on Backstabber.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
So I think we had a top tier board here. Really.
Yes.
A bunch.
And I really hope that we can get together another game sometime with this same group.
I would like that. Yeah.
But anyways, about the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Let's see, because it doesn't. There's a number of more years, but the reality of the situation is that.
You might not have been paying as much attention after you got eliminated, or
I definitely still was paying some attention, but I think that the first 5 years of the game feel much longer than the next 5 years.
Yeah, because they
usually
to you more and.
Well, no, just in general in diplomacy, I feel like you get some sort of because there's so much intensity and because nobody's been eliminated yet, that there's a lot more going on strategically those first 5 years. Nobody has a large concentration of force, whereas sort of the next 5 years, usually there's a little bit less conversation and
a little more
sort of strategic implications.
Yeah, there's a bit here where I tried to make Germany a janissary, and that was not a successful effort. And so then basically the rest of the game is a progression toward Germany being eliminated, which happens here.
Yeah, Germany and Turkey for that matter.
Oh yeah, that is true.
It seemed like neither of them were able to successfully make friends in this game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so the board ends up looking like this. I think there was. I thought sort of around the time when I was eliminated that there was a possibility for any of you, Italy or Russia, to at least attempt a solo. I think that Italy, with all of the sort of back and forth that they did, as you were saying, like they could not concentrate the force in the times when they needed to concentrate the force to try to get into a position where they could go for a solo here.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there were some turns where your forces were entirely concentrated in the north, and if they'd been able to capture Marseille, Spain, and Portugal, it would have certainly taken some diplomatic and strategic successes against you. But if they had done so, they could have potentially wrapped up the game across the sort of Sevastopol line and getting 18 centers that way, which I think is a very viable win strategy as Italy. And clearly, Turkey had no friends, so they could have cleaned up those Turkish centers whenever they wanted. So if they'd first gotten the sort of corner of the map,
I think Italy needed to do that sooner. I think that was the issue with the moving back and forth, was that it delayed the defeat of Turkey until well after you were gone, and it was before Germany fell for sure, but it was later than it should have been. It was long enough that I make this defensive position that eventually that Italy puts units outside of my borders, but eventually it was just never going to advance any further.
It's the main stalemate line. You can't do much with that. But from my perspective, it seemed like Italy had sort of an Austrian lapdog that was, not particularly threatening to Italy, but was going to do whatever Italy said. And, you could potentially manipulate that into a situation where you're still keeping Turkey limited until you can collect those centers, and then you can collect the Austrian centers because you've gotten Austria to, say, commit themselves against Russia or something. I felt like there were possibilities there. I also felt like there were possibilities for Russia if they had convinced Italy to help them get more fleets into Mediterranean. They could have potentially sort of taken over the Turkish position. And again, the Austrian player was weak enough that there were potentials there. It was unlikely for either of them, but there were potentials at certain points. And obviously, if you had been able to get momentum faster, Germany did defend themselves pretty well.
Yeah, well, if I had gotten through Germany instead of trying to use Germany as a janissary, or if I had been successful in using Germany as a janissary, I would have taken Russia out. And if that happened, then my major rival in the end game isn't there. Because Italy and Austria made a very effective team, but if not for Russia being there, I would have won. If not for Russia being as strong as he is here and able to defend against me effectively, especially with Italy distracting me. If Russia's position is broken, then the game, I think, goes very differently. But it's to Italy and Austria's credit, I suppose. I was never able to turn either of them against the other at any point. And also, they were unwilling to go after Russia. And Austria even blocked the moments when Germany was trying to move to go after Russia. So they effectively prevented my effort to extend my strength into the eastern part of the board. So it was a good game. It was well balanced by the end. I still do think. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I do kind of understand the ending here being, this game has already gone on for quite a while. It's sort of a game among friends. It's not for competitive scoring. So there's maybe no real point in continuing to its logical conclusion, but I felt like that Austria probably should have been eliminated here.
That's what I was saying too. But Italy and Austria were very tight, and also, and so I don't think they were going to willingly do that. So Russia might, but if the game went to that, I think Russia was going to try and do whatever possible to make a run for solo, and Austria was going to try and help Russia out to the extent that was possible. I don't think that it would have been successful. I think Italy and I would have stopped Russia, but it would have just been a long slog. It would have added another 5 years onto the game, probably.
Possibly.
So yeah, we did ultimately agree to this draw. But it was a good game, for sure. There were frustrating moments, I think, probably for both of us. I really tried to make something happen in the center or the east of the board, but it just never did for me. But it was fun. It was interesting. I hope you enjoyed the parts you were there for. I guess that's something you've indicated.
Yeah, and I look forward to playing a game in the future where we're not at odds, because you certainly got the upper hand on me in this case.
I likewise look forward to playing a game in the future where we're not at odds. And hopefully I'll avoid being in your position from this game in the next game we play. My thanks go out to those named on the screen at this time for their assistance in making this channel and its growth possible. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it entertaining. Till next time, Florida Man out.